Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Suravansha Jayate. Om Hari Om. Namaste, everyone, and welcome to the weekly live stream satsanga of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. As people know, for several years now, about 3 years or so, we were doing these live streams every Monday evening Central Time. And today is the very first day that we are instead doing the live stream on a Sunday at 2 p.m. And we will be doing it every Sunday at 2 p.m. from now on. So again, there won't be a Monday evening live stream anymore. So I'm sure that as word gets out, more and more people will gravitate toward this new day and time, etc. But the reason why we did this was severalfold. First of all, many of our students, of our devotees, live outside of America, primarily in Europe, a few in Australia, New Zealand, etc., many other time zones, India, Japan, quite literally all over the world. But when we were doing the live streams on Monday evening, almost none of them could make it because it was very odd hours for them. In some cases, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, etc. So as a result, many of our supporters could not see the live stream live. They could, of course, see the recording the next day, but it's fun to see it live and to be able to actually ask questions, etc. So this is one reason why we've decided to start doing Sundays at 2 p.m. The other reason is because we are reviving our in-person satsanga. So we also have a temple here with many devotees and more who will come in the future, etc. So this is serving a dual purpose. Other devotees in other nations can now see us at what is a decent time for them, not 3 o'clock in the morning. And we also, again, have a live audience here as well. And this is kind of a congregational satsanga for everyone who lives in Omaha, in the Vedic heartland as well. So that's why we're doing this. And again, we will be doing this every Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Time. So if you know anyone out there personally who has attended in the past and they're not quite aware of that, please let them know. Thank you. And that's the first thing I wanted to say. The other thing is just a few very quick announcements that I want to make, actually. As I believe I announced with the last satsanga, which was last Monday, I just finished writing a new book. It is titled Interregnum, Restoring Authentic Rulership in the Kali Yuga. And this is quite a unique book, as you can tell from the title. It is really an expansion of a talk that I gave as a live stream, maybe a year ago or so, something like that. And two of my students very, very nicely transcribed that talk for me, and I've now made it into a book. Well, the book is done. That is, the writing portion is done. Now there are proofreaders looking at it. Then, of course, it's going to be formatted and then actually published. So I can't give you an exact date, but let me say with all assurance, the book will be available for purchase within a few weeks. And whether that's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, again, I'm not sure. But the book will be available for purchase both in print form and Kindle form as well. That's the first thing. The second thing is I didn't give myself too much of a rest. I'm now working on another book, and it's actually an expansion of a previously published title. And let me tell you a little bit about this. I wrote a book, really it was an article quite some time ago, around 2004. It ended up being a 40-page paper, a 40-page article called Radical Universalism, in which using the most stringent philosophical methods imaginable, including what's called propositional analysis. I show how the idea that all religions are the same is nonsense. That was the purpose of the article, which then in 2007 became an actual book that was published by Voice of India Press, who are wonderful people. It's actually a historic, very well known press in India. And they published it very nicely, they made it available, etc. Well, unfortunately, the book has been very, very difficult to get in recent days. And people have tried. It's really not really available on Amazon anymore, which it used to be, etc. So at this point, we have decided to publish our own version of Radical Universalism. And right now, I'm in the process of expanding what was the original book. Expanding it, not by very much, maybe around, let's say, 20 to 30 pages. Of course, when I say that, some of my students may chuckle. It'll probably end up being 50 pages more that I'll end up adding to this book. But then once the writing portion is done, which should be pretty quick, because again, I'm working with a pre-published book, a book that we already published in the past. So it's not like I'm writing from scratch. As soon as that's done, that also will be available on Amazon and for the first time on Kindle, but it will be a newly revised edition. It will be beautiful. We're still debating what to do with the older cover. We might just update that, or we might have a new cover entirely. We're still kind of talking about that. But the book itself will be this book, which again has not been available really for some time. Indeed, I've been told that if you can get your hands on a copy of Radical Universalism, that's a good thing. Um, what few copies are available are selling for exorbitant prices because again, it's hard to get. Well, in a few weeks, hopefully a month, however long it takes, it won't be hard to get anymore. You'll be able to purchase it on Amazon. And again, both print version as well as Kindle, which is very nice. It's never been available in digital format. So it'll be available in both ways. So indeed, I have been busy with writing projects, writing, and more writing projects to come after that. So those are the announcements. Obviously, when both books are available for purchase, we will let you know. We'll announce here as well as all of our other venues as well. So with that, again, I thank you all for being here for this wonderful talk that we're going to do. And we're going to talk about very specifically yoga and several verses from the Daksha Samhita. How to Succeed in Yoga is the name of our talk today. And again, we are going to be looking at several verses from what is called Daksha Samhita, sometimes known as Daksha Dharma Shastra. Two different names for the exact same work. And this is a very unique work. It is, again, one of the Dharma Shastras. As people know, I've been just refreshing my knowledge of the Dharma Shastras very specifically. A set of works that most people probably would not find all that interesting, but which I find fascinating. And the reason why is because this collection of books, and there are quite a few of them, cover so many different topics. First and foremost, they cover law, ethics, etc. They cover law, they cover politics, how is a king to behave, how is a king to rule his nation, etc. But they also cover many other things as well, depending on which specific book you're talking about. They cover everything from yoga to philosophy to bhakti, reincarnation, meditation, etc., etc. And with these passages that we're going to be looking at specifically from the Daksha Samhita, these passages are talking about yoga and indeed what yoga actually is and how to succeed in yoga. Before I dive into this, let me just talk about that for a moment, actually, because you'll see that the way that these verses talk about yoga is in a very different and very interesting sort of way that you don't usually encounter. What it talks about is how to accomplish yoga. How to accomplish yoga. Now, even in just, let's say, a normal English word structure, that would sound a little bit odd if a person doesn't quite know what yoga means. Because people usually do yoga, they don't accomplish yoga. So these verses are talking about, oh, not just how to do, but how to accomplish yoga. Well, when we understand what the term yoga actually means, then this isn't very much of a mystery. Yoga certainly is a process. Yoga certainly is a sadhana. It's a systematic process of spiritual unfoldment such that you have self-realization and God awareness. That is absolutely true. But yoga, interestingly, also is the goal when it's understood in this way. That yoga, of course, as many people know, it comes from the Sanskrit verb root yuj, meaning several things: to yoke, to come together, to unite, union, etc. The word yoga itself means union. So, union in what sense? Well, I've spoken about this in the past. I'm not going to go very deeply because I am eager to look at these verses. Union in what sense? Well, several senses. Union, first and foremost, in ourselves, because we as human persons, when we think about or look at ourselves, of course, we tend to think, oh, one thing, this is me, here I am, that's it. Not understanding that there are multiple dimensions of even who we are as a person. There's, of course, the body, that's what we see in the mirror. Oh, but then there are emotions, there's mind, there's intellect, there is sense of identity. We all identify with something. In most cases, false identity. In some cases, true identity. And then ultimately there is Atman, there is the self. Now, of course, being in the material world, what we find is that all these different aspects of who we are not necessarily working in union. They're not necessarily working harmoniously together in such a way that we can accomplish greater things in this world. Rather, oh, the emotions fight against the intellect. The intellect is trying its best to control the mind, and body intervenes, etc., etc., etc. We see all these dimensions of who we are constantly clashing. Well, this is the first sense in which we have this word yoga as union. That the goal of yoga is to have union in who we are, have all of these various elements cooperate together. That's the first sense. The second sense is union between ourselves and that which is non-self. How's that for general? Is that general enough? So in other words, between ourselves and other people, ourselves and nature, between ourselves and the world, etc. You know, we often, and today especially, it's interesting, this is an actual psychological phenomenon that some people suffer from, where they have a disassociative sort of psychological makeup where they can't relate to other people or the world around them. Oh, we're seeing that more and more today, especially sadly with young people. You know, I've spoken endlessly with several of my students about the entire incel phenomenon, for example. People who play too many video games. There's a reason why I and Sanatana Dharma are adamantly opposed to video games. The reason why is because I've seen with hundreds of young men specifically that they have this dissociative problem psychologically. They cannot relate to the world around them because they think the world is a video game. So this is why they live with their parents until they're 30, they can't get a good job, they can't find a girlfriend, and on and on and on and on. Well, again, it's not merely video games. So many people have this problem of an inability to relate with those good things and people who are in the world who are outside of themselves. Well, yoga helps us to alleviate this problem such that we can now appreciate the things around us and we're not trapped in our mind. And we can appreciate that, oh, there are other people in the world. Look, oh, other people, wow, they have their own concerns, they have their own likes and dislikes. We have to be respectful toward others, etc., etc. So this is the second sense in which we have union with yoga. The final sense is union between ourselves and God. Now, of course, in actuality, we're never separated from God. You know, if we were truly separated from God, in theory, if it was even a possibility, we wouldn't exist. So we're always connected to God, but we do have the illusion that we're separated from God. And this is exactly what we're trying to overcome through yoga, meditation, etc., following this path of Sanatana Dharma. So this is the third sense in which we have union. Now, I need to just always have this caveat, because sadly there are too many individuals who before even the internet. You see, I'm old enough that most of my world existed before the internet. I got my information from actual physical books that you read and going to actual lectures, etc. Too many individuals for too long now, in the West especially, have the idea that what is meant by union with God is, of course, that we become God, that we literally merge our existence in God and we cease to be, etc., etc. No, that is philosophically silly. What is meant by union with God is that indeed we are united in will. We are united in knowing that God is our source, that God is our ultimate beloved, especially if you practice the path of bhakti. You see God as the beloved. And in this way, in the same way that even materially, you have someone you love or you're in love with, well, you have union with that person. That's the idea, at least. Well, in the same way, we have a similar sort of union with God. So this is the third way in which we have the term union. So indeed, this is why you'll see the interesting usage of the word yoga here again and again, that yoga is not just done, it is accomplished. So all that having been said, now let's go through these verses. And again, these are all from Daksha Samhita. And the first verse is chapter 7, verse 6. And it is said here, yoga arises from strict concentration, practice, firm resolution, continued antipathy in worldly affairs, and not by any other means. Very nice. Well, this is setting the groundwork for how an individual practices yoga and indeed accomplishes yoga, accomplishes this union, this threefold union that I was just mentioning. So let's go through this verse a little bit. First of all, how does an individual, practice yoga, but also, again, achieve this goal of yoga? Well, yoga arises from strict concentration. Indeed, what yoga is first and foremost is it is focused awareness upon all things of importance. If we don't have the ability to concentrate, if we don't have the ability to focus in a very, very good way, in a very, very serious sort of way, then yes, it's going to be very difficult to practice yoga, because as we are practicing, what we see is that we are focusing a relaxed focus, not a type of stressful focus, where we're kind of staring at things. No, a very relaxed focus. You see, that's the point. As we're doing meditation, what are we doing? We are focusing. We are aware of that which we are meditating upon, whether it's mantra or a murti or anything else. This is true as we're doing asanas, as we're doing the physical practices of yoga. You don't do them in such a way where, the body's going through the motions and your brain is going crazy thinking of 10 different things. No, you do so with concentration, with focus, etc. So this is indeed one of the most important prerequisites of yoga, and truthfully, by extension, any important discipline. If you're going to be accomplished in anything in life, even material things, as I always say, you want to go to college, you want to study something, you want to study a martial art, you want to go to the gym, lift weights, etc., you have to have good concentration. Your mind can't be very easily distracted. Otherwise, you won't be successful at that specific thing. Well, this is true for yoga as well. So yoga arises from strict concentration, and now second, practice. Practice. This sounds like a no-brainer. It sounds like, well, of course you practice yoga, but no, this has to actually be said. For many people, yoga is something theoretical. Indeed, it's one of my, you could say, I guess, pet peeves. It's one of my one thing that I see as very, very unfortunate, that you can go through all of YouTube and find all sorts of individuals who, and we're not talking about asana teachers, they'll actually do yoga. No, you'll find all kinds of gurus, so-called, all kinds of so-called spiritual teachers, etc. And they will talk about yoga, in some cases endlessly, in some cases, they'll analyze the entire Yoga Sutras from front to back to front, usually getting most of it wrong along the way, but that's all right. They'll talk and talk and talk about yoga, and they can't even sit as a yogi. They can't even sit the way a practiced yogi does. How does a practiced yogi sit? The way I'm sitting, effortlessly and for a very long time. They can't even do this. Indeed, if they were to try, you can kind of tell, their one of their limbs would probably snap off or something. In other words, practice, practice, practice is important. We have to actually practice yoga, and this means, of course, all the aspects of yoga. I'm talking about asanas, just to make it very, very clear. But no, meditation, the yamas and niyamas, every single aspect of yoga has to be practiced. So that's being made clear here. The next is firm resolution. Firm resolution. Something that used to be the case in the past, that indeed it was somewhat easy for people to have a firm resolution, but which today, again, not to pick on incels, but indeed many young people especially who are, even as old as 30, don't have firm resolution. And what is meant by firm resolution? Very simple. Very simple. Firm resolution means this. You say to yourself, X thing is my goal. X thing is not easy to achieve. X thing, if I am going to achieve it, is going to be hard. It's going to take effort on my part. It's going to take steadiness on my part, etc., etc. Now, I will embark on the journey to achieve X thing, and nothing will sway me away from that path. And I will not stop until I achieve X thing. That's firm resolution, that you are resolved. Well, if we're going to be successful in yoga, in spirituality, then just like anything else in life, again, the examples I gave before, you want to go to the gym, you have something you want to achieve physically, you want to have an MD, a bachelor's degree, whatever it is. Well, the same thing with spirituality, you need to have firm resolution. It's not magic. It's not just that, I want to achieve this very important thing, and my wishful thinking, my so-called sincerity, etc., that's all I need, and those will be the wings that will fly me effortlessly toward that very, very difficult to achieve path. Yeah, try that in medical school. I guarantee you're not going to graduate as a doctor at any point in your lifetime unless you have this firm resolution. Well, the same is true for yoga and spirituality as well. Now let's go on. Continued antipathy in worldly affairs. Now, this has been said, and I have commented on this in many different ways in the past, but it bears repeating, actually. So an individual should have continued, that is what is meant by continued, that word alone is important, not spotty, not once in a while, not waxing and waning, not coming and going. No, continued means continued. So all throughout my life, I need to have an antipathy toward material affairs. Now, what is meant by worldly affairs? What is meant by worldly affairs in this context is not, eating, or having a job, or having a family, etc., etc. It's not what is meant. By worldly affairs means being an atheistic materialist, taking worldly affairs too seriously to the point where, when it comes to the balance of spiritual life versus worldly affairs is up here, spiritual life is kind of somewhere down there in the basement. You see, that's what's being spoken of. That is to be avoided. It doesn't mean that we have to live an extreme lifestyle. Anything that seems worldly, I'm wearing clothing, that's worldly. How far can you take this? Well, some people try to take it to a silly extent, to a very silly extent. No, what is meant is that we are to be balanced in life. Again, even the greatest yogi has to have some shelter, has to eat, etc., etc., has to conduct business in this world. So no, we are to live a balanced life. So by antipathy in worldly affairs, all that this means is that you're not a materialist, that achieving worldly fame and gain is not the number one thing of importance to you. So this attitude is something that's very important, that indeed spirituality has to be the thing of primary importance to you. That's kind of a given if you're on the path of spiritual. Very good. And then this verse ends with this clause, a very important clause, and not by any other means. So again, I've pointed this out again and again and again, and for New Age kind of individuals who kind of like to try to play with the Vedic scriptures once in a while, and think that the teachings of the Vedic scriptures can all be summarized in light, love, and laughter. Um, there's all of that in the Vedic scriptures too. There's light, there's love, there's laughter. But the Vedic scriptures are also serious, and we need to take them seriously. So, and not by any other means. What is meant by this? What is meant by this is when a verse ends or begins or whatever with this kind of a statement, all that it's saying is this: take this seriously. This is not speculation. This is not the opinion, if you can even say such a thing, the opinion of such and such rishi or acharya or whoever is the individual in the scripture who's actually speaking. No, what this is the means, the path. And anything less than this, and you will not achieve the goal of the path. So this is why this is here, to make sure that indeed you understand the seriousness of this. So with that, let us go on to the very next verse, which is verse 7 of chapter 7 of the Daksha Samhita. And it proceeds in this way. Yoga is accomplished by finding pleasure in the meditation on the true self, by the joy of purity, and by consideration of all creatures as equally consciousness, and not by any other means. Yeah, we end with that again, but we'll get to that later. So again, now we're talking about yoga itself is accomplished. So you see why I started with that preface, that indeed we're not merely talking about doing yoga, but accomplishing yoga. So yoga being not merely the sadhana, but the state of union in the three ways that I mentioned. So let's go through this. Yoga is accomplished. So indeed, how do we achieve this sense of union, unity between ourselves and God especially? Well, it is accomplished by finding pleasure in meditation on the true self. Very nice. So let's stop there with this clause for a moment, and let me preface the rest of this verse and the next verse to come by saying that in these verses specifically, the emphasis is on self-realization. You see, teachers will emphasize different things. Patanjali, for example, emphasizes self-realization. Oh, he talks about God consciousness. He talks about Ishvara very specifically in the Yoga Sutras. But they will have an emphasis. The Narada Bhakti Sutras, so Narada, Shandilya Bhakti Sutras, including actually the Brahma Sutras, that is the main work on Vedanta, the emphasis is on God and on God consciousness. But in this case, we're going to see that it's Atman realization, understanding ourselves as Atman, that is the emphasis of these verses. So indeed, only if an individual is finding pleasure in meditation on the true self. So this is very interesting how this is stated. First of all, of course, we know that, we know that we have a true self. We know that that true self in Sanskrit is called Atman. There are several other words, but that's the most prevalent. We know that Atman is of the nature of pure, unadulterated consciousness, that it is part and parcel of the supreme consciousness of God, who is our source. We know that that Atman is our true self. We know that that Atman is in itself, even though we're in illusion now, in itself it's perfect. It has wisdom, it has goodness, it has love, etc., etc. And we are that true self. It's not that we have, like I like to say, it's not like in the Abrahamic religions, that we have a soul, but we are soul. We are that Atman. So all that being said, how do we know that Atman? Well, it's through meditation, which this is making very clear. It's through meditation that we know Atman. But this I find interesting in this verse, actually, when I read this. And I first read these verses many, many, many years ago, actually. But finding pleasure in the meditation of the true self. How interesting. How nice, actually. So again, for some people, the idea of meditation is that it's something that's very dry. And there are some forms of meditation, not in Sanatana Dharma, other religious traditions, where meditation can be pretty dry. And I'm not even going to mention any. People who know religion very well can probably, think of what these are. But there are some forms of meditation where the meditation consists of only focusing on breath and counting the breath, or a meditation will consist of sitting 18 inches to 2 feet from a wall in front of you and just focusing on that. Very dry forms of meditation. Well, meditation is meant to be something that gives an individual spiritual pleasure. It's meant to be blissful. It's meant to produce, not just produce, it's meant to unfold, to unleash, to help you to rediscover the ananda, the bliss that's already there within you. This being the case, for a person who is an experienced meditator, it's pleasurable. It's truly pleasurable. You know, for people who are beginning with meditation, and I always have to give this caveat, by beginning, I mean the first 5 to 10 years, not the first few weeks. For a person beginning meditation, it is often the case that, oh, it's a struggle. And sometimes it is a little bit blissful. Sometimes it's a struggle. And you're having one of those days where the mind won't cooperate, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, that's the process that in the beginning one has to go through. But what a person begins to experience is that as more time goes on, you look forward to meditation because you are experiencing a wonderful sense of bliss. And I'm not going to go very deeply into the mechanics of why that is the case because I have in the past. But you do indeed experience pleasure in the very process itself of meditation. But with that, let's go on. By the joy of purity. By the joy of purity. Indeed, purity is crucial for an individual who wishes to be spiritual. And again, as we'll see at the end of this verse, as we saw at the end of the last verse, there's no way around this. This is how it is. That an individual who wishes to be a spiritual individual, they need to purify themselves. And what does this mean? It means on every level of who we are. It means even physically we are to purify ourselves. We should live a very healthy lifestyle. It means that we should try to eat as healthily as we can, if we can. Organic foods, we should be vegetarian. We should go out of our way to know a lot about nutrition and make sure we're getting all the nutrients we need. We should drink a lot of very nice pure water, etc., etc. Take herbs, take tinctures, take Ayurvedic healing herbs, etc., in order to purify our body. But then we are to purify also our mind. How do we do this? Well, through indeed meditation, other processes as well. And what begins to happen when we begin to do meditation in a serious way is we begin to have control over our mind. That's the most important thing. And with that control, we can now slowly begin to rid ourselves of those nasty things, nasty sort of behavioral things that are there within the mind, and then to cultivate the opposite. So we purify our mind, etc., etc. So in every way, the idea is to purify ourselves. We purify ourselves ethically as well. You know, if an individual has bad habits, so they do drugs or anything like this, we are to purify ourselves. But again, also ethically, we are to become more and more ethical in our behavior toward others, etc., etc. So we purify ourselves, and now we go on. And by consideration of all creatures as equally consciousness. This is important, this last clause. I gave a live stream talk just a few weeks ago that was about vegetarianism, about the importance of vegetarianism. And we also went through a similar sort of Dharma Shastra, and in that Dharma Shastra, the verses themselves talked about how, it's terrible to take the life of other living beings if you don't have to. And now this is further confirmation of this. By the consideration, what's meant by the consideration? Think about other living creatures. Don't just see them as objects. Don't just see them as things that are there for your use, etc. No, have consideration. Just like in the same way that you would have consideration for someone who's important to you, a good friend, a family member. By consideration, it means that you think about them, not just, in this specific instance, what's good for me. No, you have consideration. You think, what is good for this person who is important to me, etc. Well, this verse is going deeper. It's saying by consideration of all creatures, not human creatures alone, but of all creatures. So what does this mean? Well, this harkens back to vegetarianism, that indeed, if we are going to be spiritual people, let me just state this. I gave another talk on vegetarianism maybe 10 years ago or so here at the temple. And I don't know if this, I believe it did end up in the video itself, that someone asked me the question, well, can a person be truly spiritual and achieve liberation while not being a vegetarian? And I didn't hesitate. I told the person, no, 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 no. There's no such thing as, oh, this person is the greatest of saints and sages. He is communing with God 24 hours a day, and he loves going to McDonald's and having Big Macs. There is no such thing. Why is this the case? Because such an individual would not be ethical. Such an individual would not be following this principle and the principles, again, that we spoke about just a few weeks ago. And this is the thing that we are to ask ourselves. Really? Really? That person is a liberated being. He can't even control his own mouth. He can't even control his own urges. And as I said in that video, that again was maybe 10 years ago or so, there are 14-year-old girls who become vegetarian just for their figure. To become vegetarian is easy. And yet here is this exalted being, this exalted person, and he doesn't have the strength within him to be vegetarian, really. You see, this belies the claim that he's a liberated being. He can't be. So yes, indeed, we are to have consideration of all creatures, and now explains why, as equally consciousness. See, this is a wonderful verse, actually, and this one little clause alone about being respectful toward all creatures, it gives us so much. Why? Because of course an atheist an atheist for whom no creature has a soul anyway. They're just walking meat, quite literally, for an atheist. They could ask, well, why? Why should we be respectful toward other beings? They came into the world, they're here, they're going to disappear eventually. What does it matter? What does it matter if I mistreat people? What does it matter if I mistreat animals, etc., etc.? Well, the answer is here, because all such beings are equally consciousness. So in other words, in the same way that we are what I was talking about earlier, Atman, we are consciousness, so are all of these other beings. Indeed, this is one of the wonderful teachings of, not just Sanatana Dharma, but the totality of the ancient world. Indeed, the totality, this is a new thing. And when I say new, I mean very new. Oh, animals don't have souls. Only humans have souls. But animals don't have souls. Oh my Lord, this is a very new idea. And when I say new, roughly 1800 years or so that it came about. The rest of the ancient world would disagree with this. And again, not just Sanatana Dharma, all of Buddhism, all of Taoism, all of Confucianism, the vast majority of individuals in pre-Christian Europe would disagree with this. It was understood where you see life, you see soul, you see spirit, you see consciousness. That was the understanding of the vast, 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 vast majority of human beings upon the earth at one time. Well, now we have forgotten this, again, first due to Abrahamism, and now because we're living in a so-called scientific atheistic age, where, not even humans supposedly have souls anymore. No, according to the Vedic scriptures, and again, all the ancients, all living beings by definition are consciousness. This being the case, in the same way that we would not want ourselves to be abused. Why? Because we're consciousness, we're feeling beings. Well, this is true for cows, this is true for chickens, this is true for dogs and cats, etc., etc. So indeed. And then finally, the last clause, and not by any other means. So again, these principles that are spoken of here, no, it's not a delicatessen buffet where you just kind of pick what you like. If we are to practice yoga, meditation, spirituality, then indeed these principles that are being spoken of, every single last one of them needs to be followed, and very seriously by us. Let's go on now to the very last verses that we're going to look at. And this is actually several verses. It's actually verse 8 and 9 of the 7th chapter of Daksha Samhita. And it proceeds in this way. He who is devoted to the true self, who daily revels in true self, who is given to the culture of the true self, who is always engaged in meditation on the true self, who is by nature fond of the true self, who is contented, who does not have his mind attached to any other object, and who is well satisfied with the true self. He succeeds in attaining to yoga. Very nice two verses that are very poetically constructed, and we will look at these now. So first of all, he who is devoted to the true self, i.e., that individual who is devoted to self-realization. Again, what is meant by true self? Well, this is Atman, and realization of Atman is called Atmajnana. Atmajnana. This is one of the preliminary stages of enlightenment. And I've spoken about this very in-depth in the past, so I'm not going to go very, very in-depth now, because again, this gives you incentive to look at all the previous videos, and you should be watching every single one of our previous over 300 videos. But indeed, an individual who is devoted to self-realization, who truly wants to know who they are when all the illusion is stripped away, that individual who is devoted to knowing who really am I. So this is the first clause. Now let's go on. Who daily revels in true self. Daily revels in true self. What does this mean? Meditation. An individual who every single day, how do you revel in your true self? Well, you have to know your true self. You have to experience that Atman. You have to experience that true self. And more, what does revel mean? It's interesting. It's a nice word, actually. It's somewhat older English, but I think some people once in a blue moon still use it today. It means to take sport in, it means to take pleasure in, more than anything. So an individual who takes pleasure in that true self. All right, let's go on. Who is given to the culture of true self. Now, this we need to talk about a little bit. This is important. Who is given to the culture of true self. Indeed, there is a culture of self-realization, of knowing who and what we are. Know thyself, you know. This is a very famous Socratic statement. Well, we need to know ourselves, and how do we do this? See, it's one thing to say that. These are two words, know thyself, know thyself. Yeah, thyself being one word. These are two words, know thyself. Well, the truth of the matter is, it's nice to hear that, but how do we do that? Well, this is what is wonderful, is that in Sanatana Dharma, there is a full system for, indeed, systematically unfolding knowledge of and experience of who and what we truly are. This is known as, what are we talking about today? Yoga. Very good. I don't know if you could hear them, but my student said yoga. Yes, this is the culture of true self. But more than this, it's interesting how this is translated as culture, given to the culture of the true self. So certainly this does mean yoga. First of all, yoga itself is a culture. I believe I've spoken about that in the past. But more than this, it's speaking about that which is true culture, generally speaking, as well. Oh, we can go very deeply into this, and it's actually a very important topic. And that is that, when we look at cultures around us today, and specifically in 2023, what do we see? We see cultures that simply don't work anymore. We see cultures that are atheistic, that are materialistic, etc., where what is the center of any specific culture? Well, it will vary, certainly from nation to nation, but especially if we're talking about, advanced, industrialized nations, all of Europe, North America, etc., the center of the culture, of course, is money. And then it will vary from place to place. Well, in Vedic times, the idea was that indeed self-realization and God consciousness, that was the center of the culture of a given society. So indeed, this is what this little clause is speaking about as well. So, who is given to the culture of the true self. In other words, living in a Vedic society in which there are temples, beautiful Vedic temples every other block, and again, you are ruled by a legitimate ruler who himself is a spiritual person, etc., etc., and everything around you militates toward the spiritual, not toward the material. Well, we are indeed to give ourselves to such a culture such that in every way that we live in this world, we are elevated, elevated, elevated. The music is spiritual. The entertainment is spiritual. The arts and culture around us are spiritual. The politics are spiritual. The economics are spiritual, etc., etc., etc. So we are to give ourselves to such a spiritual culture. Now let's go on. Who is always engaged in meditation on the true self. So indeed, yes, meditation on the true self. This is how we know who and what we really, really, really are, is via meditation. And I've said this before, and many of my students can attest to this, that it is actually very early on, even early on when you begin to do meditation, that even when sometimes, it's still a struggle, etc., but once in a while, when you are truly focused and at peace, and you are focusing on breath concentration, but then especially mantra meditation, you begin to feel that bliss that is coming from deep within you, and you are beginning to experience the true self that is there within you. You experience the state of eternality. Not just the concept, not just the idea of eternity, not just eternality as a philosophical concept. No, you begin to experience the state of eternality. As you're in meditation, you're overwhelmed by the sense that the eternal is the natural. Nothing's dying around us. That's not the natural. Nothing's coming and going. Not, what's in the news today? No, what is natural to us is being situated at all times in the eternal. And why? Because your Atman is eternal. So indeed, it is in meditation especially that we begin to experience the self. Now let's go on. Who is by nature fond of the true self? Oh, sometimes it may surprise people that I'll pick a little clause like this and I'll say I could give an hour-long talk on this one clause. I could actually give multiple series on this clause of lectures. Who is by nature fond of the true self? People today, not everyone, but so many people, and this is a recent thing. This is in the last several decades, the last maybe few generations. People are not fond of themselves today. This is a psychological state that everyone has witnessed, where people have no confidence in themselves. People have no self-respect, no self-esteem. People, when they think of themselves, they think of the worst things. I'm terrible, I'm stupid, I'm horrible, I'm ugly, I'm this, I'm that, why am I even alive, etc., etc. And it's, of course, heartbreaking. It's sad that people are not fond of themselves, of who they are, and as a result, this is why. This is why we have more people in depression today. See, the idea of qualitative evolution is nonsense. The idea that, people were stupider in the past, things are great now. No. We have more depression today. We have more of these psychological problems that I'm mentioning today than at any other time in history, and it's gotten progressively worse and worse and worse. People are not fond of themselves today. So this is what is wonderful, is that this clause is saying, who is by nature fond of the true self? It comes to the point where when you can not only look at yourself, but look past the illusion that you think that you are, the traumas of your past, the things, the negative, stupid things that stupid people convinced you that you were. Stupid people throughout your life who convinced you that you were worth nothing, etc., etc. When you look past all that, and then you finally come to the point of realizing who you truly are as this Atman, as this being of light who has God as his source. You begin, not in a New Age way, not in a Whitney Houston way, but in a real way, you begin to love that self. Understanding that, no, everything that was said about me that gave me all these psychological problems where I have zero confidence, I can't even get out of my house, you realize it was all a lie. And you now begin to have that self-respect, because that respect is now based on true self. So indeed, this clause is very important for people today. You want to overcome this conditioning that you've had all your life to convince yourself that you're nothing. Know your true self. And when you know your true self, you will find a treasure that is inconceivable. And that treasure itself is, again, sourced in God. So let's go on. Who is contented? Santosha. Santosha. I've spoken about this in the past as well, but very important. We are to have contentment. We are to be contented in who and where we are. That is, we are to be detached from all the things around us, not in an unnatural sort of way. No, we can enjoy the world in a nice, sattvic, happy, innocent way. But we are to be detached from the pains of this world, of the ups and downs, etc., etc. We are to be grateful for all the good things in our life, understanding that, oh yes, I may be going through some sort of tough time right now or something. But the truth of the matter is that, oh, I have more blessings in my life than I can even count. And in this way, we are to be content in everything that we are and everything that we do. This is also one of the foundations of yoga. And indeed, this is spoken of by many people in yoga. Let's go on. Who does not have his mind attached to any other object. In other words, again, whose mind is not attached to any form of materialism. Indeed, if we are to achieve a spiritual goal, the spiritual goal, then we have to have our mind attached to that goal. I've spoken about this, about how attachment, well, there's negative attachment, but then there's positive attachment. Positive attachment means to be attached to, again, the path itself, to yoga, to God. So these positive things we are to be attached to. But what is being spoken of here are those negative things, anything other than that which is truly spiritual. We're not to be attached. We're not to be attached to our car. We're not to be attached to our home. And again, always with the caveats, do we not care about the car? No, as a yogi, we take better care of our car than most people. As a yogi, we take better care of our house than most people. As a yogi, we take better care of our finances than most people. But we're not attached to them. We understand that they're not the priority in our life. God is the priority. Let's go on. And who is well satisfied with the true self. Atmarama. Atmarama. This is the term for this, especially in Srimad Bhagavatam, but in other yoga literature as well. That is satisfaction in one's true self. See, we all seek satisfaction. The vast, vast majority of people are dissatisfied about the vast, vast majority of things in their life. To achieve satisfaction is a very difficult thing. Well, when we know our true self, again, when we have self-realization, what ends up happening is, very naturally as a result of that self-realization, not only do we become fond of our true self, not only do we experience the bliss of our true self, but indeed, as this is saying, we become satisfied in true self. In other words, we now have that which all beings are seeking, and we now have it. We have satisfaction. We're now satisfied. See, think of any being you can think of. Think of an ant. Think of any insect. Think of, again, dog, cat, horse. Think of human beings you know. Think, for that matter, even very often of the gods. Certainly, you can think of demons. You'll find that, again, no one is fully satisfied. People are searching for satisfaction. And the more they search materially, of course, they don't find it. That's why they keep searching. That's why they keep searching and searching. You see, how many movies have you watched in your life? One? One? Did you find that one perfect movie that once you found it and watched it, you're satisfied? You never have to see another movie again. No. And of course, by extension, we can say that about any other material thing. So indeed, that search goes on and on and on. Well, what is being said here is that one who achieves that self-realization and now has found their true self and is experiencing their true self, indeed experiencing the world now as Atman, that person achieves true satisfaction. And thus, this is by extrapolation, is at peace. You ever seen a dissatisfied person who's at peace? No, by definition, no. Once you have that satisfaction, now you're at peace. And then to end this verse, he, that is the person who does all the above that we've just been speaking about, he succeeds in attaining to yoga. It is that individual who does everything that was just mentioned in all these verses. That person achieves that union within themselves, that union between themselves and all good things outside themselves, so they don't have the illusion of thinking that they're just an island unto themselves, a selfish, narcissistic little island. No, they have union with the good around them, they have union with God. Such an individual, that person succeeds in attaining to yoga. So with that, I thank you all for listening to this lecture, history-making lecture, because this is our first Sunday live stream, and this is the first of what will be weekly Sunday live streams. So thank you for being here. Let me see now if there are any questions about anything that we have discussed today or anything pertaining to Sanatana Dharma. Any pertinent questions, please? Very good. Let me just say, before I even get to the questions, that it is so wonderful seeing so many of our European devotees here. This is exactly what I was hoping for, and it is the case. We have devotees from the UK, from Croatia, from Russia, from many nations all throughout the world. I barely even looked, actually, just off the top of first glance. I'm just seeing that, so I'm very happy that people are here. Good. Here's a good question from Boris, and it is a very, very timely question, actually. And it is Namaste Acharya. We are now witnessing the rise of artificial intelligence in modern society. What is the Vedic perspective on AI? Thank you for everything. Very good. This is the Vedic perspective on artificial intelligence. You already know what I'm going to say. Very good. It is not intelligence. It's, excuse me for saying this, but we're being very real and we're being very modern. It's like a sex robot. It's not real. You see, they're also threatening us with those to appear in the future as well. In the same way, well, artificial intelligence, by its very definition, is not something that is intelligence. Intelligence is a metaphysical, ontological phenomenon that cannot be exhibited through any sort of mechanistic means, and certainly cannot operate through any mechanistic means, and no mechanistic means can fully copy what intellect in and of itself, buddhi, can do. Now, with this understanding, they are creating something that approximates intelligence, but this is one of the most dangerous attempts in the history of the stupid scientists. This is worse than they're playing with atoms and creating potential nuclear holocausts. In the case of the Japanese, real nuclear holocausts. This is as stupid as individuals who created all of these GMOs and playing with the genes of people and animals, etc. This is arguably more dangerous. Why? Because what small-brained individuals think they can control when they are trying to control a very, very powerful technology, no, in time that technology is going to control them. So this is why I agree with many, many very intelligent people in this world, including Elon Musk, that there should be a moratorium on all AI, at the very least. And truthfully, as far as I'm concerned, I would go further. I would ban it entirely because it's something that is too dangerous, more dangerous than GMOs, more dangerous than nuclear weaponry, etc. So I hope that answers the question. Hmm. Very good. Here is a very nice question from Varsaga, and it is Namaste Acharya. When we feel overcome by negative emotions like lust and anger, what should we do in that moment so we don't act on these emotions? You replace them quickly as you can with the positive. These are negative things. There are such a thing as negative emotions. When you have such negative emotions and they arise in the wrong time, the wrong place, etc., you see, arguably, even these emotions can be used in a positive way. When you say lust, well, with your wife, that's fine. Anger in the midst of war, oh, that's understandable. But again, especially when these negative things arise in such a way where there's no reason for them and they're harming you, harming people around you, etc. As quickly as possible, you are to replace them with their opposite. And this is a practice. First, let me say this. When I say this, oh, yes, it's easier said than done. You better believe it's easier said than done. And it's because it's a practice. When we find any negative emotion, and for that matter, again, fear, jealousy, envy, any of these negative emotions, when they appear, we are to engage in the systematic, ongoing, progressive practice of replacing them with their opposite. Of first recognizing what is happening. See, this is the the absolutely initial problem. Is that when a person is experiencing these things, they're not even recognizing it. They lose themselves in the emotion. They think, oh, how I'm reacting. Oh, it's just, this is me. I am the anger. This is me. This is the norm now. No, we are to, number one, realize what's happening. Number two, we are to, let's say it's a situation, we are to remove ourselves from that situation. And if we can't physically, then in ourselves, we are to remove ourselves from that situation. And then finally, we are to replace that negative emotion with a positive one as much as we can. So, very short answer, but that's enough of an answer because if a person can work on these steps, oh, you'll have success. So, I hope that answers your question. Very good. Bishwajit is here, which is wonderful, and he says, Namaste, Sri Acharya. Simply to say thank you for all that you do. Words are not enough to express my gratitude for what you do to bring to all of us. Jaya Sriman Narayana. Very nice. Bishwajit, very good to see you. Wonderful to see you. I'm glad that you could make it here, and you also are one of our devotees in Europe who maybe for the first time can actually make it here alive. Here is Om Namo Narayanaya. What a perfect talk. I have to watch it tomorrow again. A lot of important reminders for me. It is absolutely wonderful also that you could make it here from Europe as well. Very good. Very good. Let me just answer this very, very quickly. This is from Peculiar Endeavors, and it's an important question. And let me first, of course, give the caveat. I'm not an MD. I am a doctor, but a PhD. I'm not a medical doctor, but let me just say this. You asked, Namaste, Sri Acharya. I was diagnosed with a heart condition 2 years ago. I'm very sorry that that's the case. That is terrible. For this reason, I must be on a low-carb diet, so I can't be vegetarian. Would this disqualify me from initiation? Let me answer this, and again, keeping in mind that I am not an expert on nutrition, I am not an MD, but let me tell you something. I'm on a low-carb diet, actually. I used to eat a lot of carbs, but for not very long, the last few months actually, I've been on a low-carb diet now, and I actually feel better than I ever have. It is possible to have a low carb diet and to supplement it with other things and still be vegetarian because I'm vegetarian. And again, I have a low carb diet, not no carb, and that's what you say, low carb, because indeed to avoid all carbs is impossible, As a vegetarian, for example, you should eat beans because they're high in protein and other nutrients, and those have some carbs in them, but they're a very healthy sort of carb. So it is possible, first of all, again, if you do a lot of research, you can have a low carb diet and at the same time be vegetarian. So that answers the first part. But then you ask, would this disqualify me from initiation? For the most part, yes. Yes, and let me tell you, the reason why I say for the most part is even if a person, let's say, is not 100% vegetarian upon the time of initiation, if a well, if their goal is to eventually be vegetarian, and for some reason right now they're not, sometimes initiation is still given. It's a rarity. It's a rare thing. But there have been times when a person, oh, they're still eating fish for some reason. And again, it's for some sort of health reason or whatever. Some gurus, legitimate gurus, will say, all right, as long as your goal is to be vegetarian, then it's fine. Otherwise, yes, we tend to be very, very strict about this, that a person must be vegetarian in order to qualify for initiation. But again, it's ultimately up to the guru. The guru, by definition, should be someone who is full of compassion and mercy. So sometimes, even if they know that a person is not 100% following all the rules and regulations for a big reason, a real reason, not just that they're lazy. But if they know that, oh, it's the person's goal that in a few months or whatever, they will be following all the regulations, sometimes the guru will still give initiation. But again, it's a rare thing. Very good. Very nice. Very good. I'm looking at the time. I'm just trying to see if there's maybe one more question that I can answer quickly. So please just give me a moment to look through these questions. Good. Maybe this will be the last question that I answer actually, and it's one that I think many people, especially today, experience. So let me answer this. It's from Esoteric Highway. Hello, Acharyaji. What would you recommend for someone who wants to sit in meditation for longer periods of time, but cannot due to tightness in the hips and back? Thank you. Well, this is a problem that indeed many, many, many people suffer from for various reasons, sometimes age, sometimes due to, oh, they just have a more sedentary lifestyle or something. They're an IT person, so they have no choice but to sit by their computer 10 hours a day. There are many different reasons. Several things I would say about this. First of all, you can do things to indeed loosen your back and hips. Indeed, this is what asanas are for. This is what yoga is for. And this is why yogis did yoga. Indeed, that's why I did yoga. That's why I can sit like this effortlessly for pretty much as long as I want. I could sit like this for another hour without any discomforture, certainly at the very least, probably much more than that. It's because I did yoga. I would suggest that you begin doing some good asanas. As a very start, a nice little foundation, I always recommend to people who have this problem, do Surya Namaskara, sun salutations. And let me tell you, we have a video now on sun salutations. So indeed, if you just look through our videos from the past, it wasn't a live stream, it was an actual released video. We have a video on sun salutations. So if you haven't done them before, just follow that video, watch the video again and again and again, practice, practice, practice. And if you do sun salutations a certain number of times a day, even for, let's say, 10, 15 minutes a day, in some time, probably a few weeks at the most, depending on your specific problem, which I don't know, oh, you'll feel everything start to loosen. You'll feel your back start to loosen, the hips, and sitting for a long time will be much more comfortable. That's the first thing. Second thing I want to say is, in the meantime, just sit in a comfortable chair. It's fine to sit in a comfortable chair and do your meditation. Uh, I'm a perfectionist, as every spiritual person should be. We seek excellence in all things. And for myself, first and foremost, I seek excellence in myself. I don't tell people to do things that I don't do and do perfectly. So if you find that it is not possible to sit like this, don't worry about it. You know, again, I'm a perfectionist. This is how I do meditation. When I do meditation, usually I'm not sitting up here. Usually I'm sitting on the ground, on a cushion, but I'm sitting in pretty much the same way. Um, but if you find that you can't, it's all right. Sit in a chair. You know, there's nothing to be embarrassed about or anything like this. Whatever sort of chair you need, if you need a back, that's fine. If you need a more comfortable chair, it doesn't matter. Just as long as you do the meditation. So do the meditation, do the meditation, do the meditation. That is number one. That is the thing of primary importance. And then on top of that, do the Surya Namaskara. Again, look for that video that's here on our channel and do this every single day until it gets to the point where your back does become loose, your hips become loose, and you will be able to sit, maybe on a very comfortable cushion at first, on the ground, etc. And even if it comes to the point where that never happens, because, again, I don't know your specific situation. Let's say that you have severe problems and it gets to the point where even with yoga, you really can't sit in a yogic sort of way like this. That's all right. If you have to sit in a chair for the rest of your life and do meditation, that's all right. The important thing is, in this case specifically, that you are sincere and that you do the best that you can with meditation. The physical body is secondary. The meditation is of most importance. So I hope that was helpful. And with that, again, yes, we have so many more questions, but sadly we are over time, so I'm not going to be taking any more questions. Next Sunday, there'll be more opportunity. So again, I want to thank you all very, very much for being here for this historic live stream, the first of many, 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 many in the future live streams on Sundays at 2 p.m. Central Time. Thank you very much for being here for this. And again, I'm so happy that people outside of America who are able to join us again next Sunday, 2 p.m. And with that, namaste. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma. Jayate. Dharma Rashtra. Jayate. Surya Vansha. Jayate. Om Hari Om. And before we sign off, I want to do one nice little fun thing so that people in our overseas audience and our live stream know that we do indeed have a temple full of devotees here. Everyone, at the proper time, I want you to all shout out, Jaya. Sanatana Dharma ki Jaya. Very good. Wonderful. And may we someday hear this cry all throughout the world. Namaste. And everyone, from now until the next time, next Sunday at 2 p.m. that we get together, I ask you all that you please take very good care of yourselves in every way.